Today we're opening up a really specific stack of sources. We've got ancient texts, historical reports, and some pretty deep modern scholarly analyses.
All to explore a chapter in history that I think is often just
Yeah,
completely overlooked.
it really is. We're talking about the deep indigenous African roots of Christianity.
Right.
Because for many of us, the story we get is that Christianity showed up in Africa much, much later.
Imported by European powers or even slave traders. That's the common narrative.
Exactly. But our deep dive today, well, it shows that narrative isn't just incomplete, it's fundamentally wrong. We're going back
All the way back.
to the first century. We're going to trace a history
Mm.
where African leaders and entire civilizations were not just recipients of the faith, they were the architects.
The original architects of so much of what we now call Western theology. That's the key.
The truth is, when you actually look at the source material, Christianity was flourishing in Africa a full millennium before the first European colonial ships even appeared.
So what we're really doing today is a kind of historical recovery.
Hmm.
It's about understanding that the foundational doctrines, the very terms that still shape global Christianity, from Rome to London, were largely conceived by indigenous scholars.
We're talking Coptic, Berber, and Punic thinkers in North Africa.
That's right.
And here's the promise we're making to you today. We are going to name the individuals who actually coined the terminology you hear every Sunday. And we'll also highlight the person who is widely considered the most influential figure in all of Christian history, second only to the Apostle Paul,
Who was in fact African.
who was African. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So the story really starts with the Bible itself. Africa was central to the faith from, the very first generation of believers.
Absolutely. The book of Acts gives us immediate evidence of just how far the gospel spread and how fast. The first documented convert outside of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He's often cited by historians as the first fruit of the faithful in the entire world.
Yeah.
And he was the Ethiopian eunuch.
It's such an amazing detail. Acts chapter 8 describes him, and he's not just some random person. He's a high-ranking finance minister for Queen Candace.
A very powerful man. And he was already devout enough to be making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. He was seeking...
He was actively reading scripture Isaiah, specifically when the Apostle Philip runs into him on the road. And he gets baptized right then and there.
Around 34 A.D.
And tradition holds that he went straight home to preach. He sowed the seeds of the faith deep into what would become the kingdom of Axum.
And you can't overlook Simon of Cyrene.
Right. From modern-day Libya.
Exactly. From Libya, the man who was forced by Roman soldiers to help Jesus carry the cross. These are foundational first-century African connections.
So that initial spark, it quickly grows into, an institutional fire, right?
It does.
The sources credit the Apostle Mark with evangelizing Alexandria in Egypt as early as, 43 A.D.? Maybe closer to 60 A.D.?
And this is so critical because Alexandria wasn't just another city. It was the intellectual powerhouse of the ancient world.
The library.
The library, the philosophy, it was everything. So Alexandria becomes Christianity's major intellectual hub. And by the late 2nd century, it's home to the Catechetical School.
Which was basically the West's first real theological university.
The first one.
Yeah.
Where thinkers like Clement of Alexandria and Origen were studying.
Yeah.
Their work, it laid the groundwork for critical biblical study, for textual analysis, for philosophical theology.
All the disciplines that the later Latin West would just inherit.
They inherited the whole framework.
Wow, that really shifts the timeline, doesn't it? But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the giants who defined Latin Christianity itself.
This is the key. You have to contextualize Roman Africa. These Roman provinces stretching across North Africa, Carthage, Hippo, this whole region became the crucible for Latin theology.
And these were multi-ethnic places.
Very. When we talk about these great church fathers, you have to remember they were indigenous, they were Coptic, Berber, Punic, they were African, born and bred, not, some kind of Roman expats.
And they didn't just inherit the tradition, they literally invented the language to describe it.
Exactly.
Let's start with Tertullian, AD 150 to 240, from Carthage.
The father of Latin Christianity.
The founder of Western theology. These are not small titles.
No, and he was a revolutionary thinker. He needed a new vocabulary to translate these complex Greek ideas into a Latin-speaking world.
And his most famous contribution.
He coined the word Trinitas.
Trinity.
He was the first to use it to define the Godhead as 3 persons in one substance. Just think about that for a second. The central defining term of Christianity.
Is a Latin word invented by an African man? He also coined sacramentum.
The word for holy rites, yes.
And his writing was also fiercely apologetic. He was defending the faith.
Oh, he had to. He was defending Christians against these absurd accusations, like that they were engaging in incest or eating children during their rituals.
And in doing that, he gave the persecuted church its most powerful and enduring motto.
The blood of the martyrs is seed. That single phrase just captured the defiant, paradoxical growth of the early faith.
And this era just produced an incredible run of thinkers. You've also got Minucius Felix.
He died in AD 250. His text, Octavius, is one of the earliest examples we have of Latin apologetics.
Arguing for the rational possibility of faith.
Exactly. Pushing back against intellectual paganism.
And then there's Cyprian.
Cyprian, the Bishop of Carthage. He died in 258. He really moved the conversation from intellectual defense more toward institutional structure.
Right. He developed these core understandings of the Eucharist as a sacrificial ritual, and he clearly defined the authority of bishops.
He did. He's also the source of one of the most provocative statements in all of church history.
Outside the church, there is no salvation.
That's the one. It defined the boundaries of the organized church. But it also got him into trouble. He actually fled during a persecution in 250 AD.
Which raised all these questions about sin and forgiveness for people who lapsed in their faith.
It did. And you can round out that group with Lactantius,
another North African,
whose Divine Institutes was the first really comprehensive work aimed at defending Christianity to a highly educated pagan audience. These men literally built the concepts, political, liturgical, linguistic, that became the spine of European Christianity.
But all of this influence, it really culminates with the most monumental figure of the period.
Without a doubt.
We have to talk about Augustine of Hippo. Born in what is now Algeria, AD 354, his legacy is just unparalleled. He's seen as the most influential church father in Western Christianity and Western philosophy.
Second only to Paul.
Second only to Paul.
And his life itself, which he documented so honestly in his Confessions, it was a journey of intellectual and spiritual struggle. And that honesty really informed his theology.
He was a bishop during a time of immense chaos. The Roman Empire was crumbling.
It was. His own city, Hippo, was being besieged by the Vandals when he died. This political collapse forced him to synthesize the whole of Christian thought.
His contributions span everything. I mean, his work, The City of God, redefined the relationship between church and state for centuries. But we should focus on his core doctrines.
Okay, so he developed and popularized the concept of original sin.
Which fundamentally changed how the West viewed human nature.
Fundamentally. And then his intellectual battle with Pelagianism.
Yeah.
The idea that humans could achieve salvation through their own good works, that led him to really double down on the doctrines of predestination and grace.
And what's so significant here, for you listening, is that his focus on salvation by grace alone, well, that became the theological foundation for the entire Protestant Reformation.
1,000 years after his death.
Over 1,000 years later. Yeah. Thinkers like Martin Luther, John Calvin, they went straight back to Augustine's texts to build their arguments.
And he didn't stop at theology. When the empire was collapsing and people were debating when a Christian could even fight, he formalized the just war theory.
He insisted that war could only be justified if it met really strict criteria.
Right cause, right intention, proper authority. It's a framework that remains the basis for ethical military engagement even today.
And his social ethics were just as powerful. He challenged slavery, stating God intended man to have dominion over the beasts, not man over man.
That belief led his own clergy to free their slaves, and he personally protested to Roman authorities, pushing them to ban child trafficking and slavery.
It's just humbling. The fundamental philosophical arguments that define the modern Western mind really came from this North African thinker living in the shadow of a dying empire.
Absolutely. Much of what defines Western theological debate today, from politics to sin and grace, you can trace it directly back to this man.
Okay, so let's move eastward. Christianity was also developing in these distinct indigenous cultures in the Nile Valley and beyond. If the West had Augustine,
the East had Athanasius.
Right. Alexandria continued to play this crucial role, especially in defining Christology, the understanding of Christ's nature.
And Athanasius of Alexandria was a titan. He was bishop for 45 years, and because he refused to compromise, he was exiled 5 separate times by different emperors.
That's how he earned the famous nickname Athanasius Contra Mundum.
Athanasius against the world. Because he stood virtually alone, defending the full divinity of Christ against Arianism.
And just to remind everyone, Arianism was this powerful heresy at the time.
Yeah, huge heresy.
It argued that Christ was a created being, not eternally divine like the Father. Athanasius argued that this just destroyed the entire concept of salvation.
He was pivotal at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD.
Pivotal. He was only 27 years old, and he helped draft the Nicene Creed, affirming Christ's eternal divinity.
And he also gave us something else critical. Athanasius was the first person to identify the 27 books of the New Testament that we all recognize today. He basically settled the canon.
He did. And it's revealing that even the physical descriptions of him in the sources mentioned that he was short and dark-skinned. His opponents, sometimes sneeringly called him the Black Dwarf. Wow. Now, let's move south from Egypt, because we encounter a Christian empire whose timeline is probably going to surprise you.
Ethiopia, or the Kingdom of Axum.
Ethiopia declared Christianity its national religion in 330 AD under King Ezana.
This is such a crucial marker. This happened 2.5 centuries before the Roman Empire made Christianity its official state religion.
This was an indigenous, sovereign Christian state from the very beginning.
And they hold an even older tradition, that the Queen of Sheba, Makeda, introduced the worship of the one true God to the region 1,000 years before Christ.
So this long, unique history allowed their church to develop these incredibly robust traditions, completely separate from Rome.
The core difference is right there in the name, the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church. Tewahedo means oneness. It adheres to the doctrine of the one nature of Christ.
And that theological position led to the first major schism in the church, right after the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD.
It did. To clarify, Chalcedon ruled that Christ had two distinct natures, divine and human united without confusion. The Tewahedo Church held a slightly different view, emphasizing the complete unity of Christ's nature. And that disagreement permanently separated the African churches from the dominant Roman and Byzantine ones.
But because of that schism, or maybe despite it, the Tewahedo Church became this incredible preserver of antiquity.
They hold some of the most ancient, complete Christian texts in existence. The Garima Gospels, written in the Ge'ez language between 330 and 650 AD. Their preservation is just. It's priceless.
And of course, there's the most captivating tradition of all.
The Ark of the Covenant.
The Ethiopian Church maintains that the original Ark is housed in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum.
Guarded to this day by a single monk who is the only person allowed to see it. Whether it's literally true or not, the belief itself just underscores the unique historical identity of this ancient African church.
And this whole historical narrative, from Tertullian coining the Trinity to Athanasius defining the New Testament, it demonstrates a persistent indigenous leadership role that has just been overlooked in the West.
But that influence isn't just historical.
No, it continues powerfully into the 21st century.
The statistics are clear. African Catholicism is the fastest growing Catholic region in the world. By 2050, estimates suggest Africans will make up 32% of the entire global Catholic Church.
That is a massive demographic shift. And it isn't just internal growth. We're seeing this powerful flow of ministry back into the diaspora.
Take the Josephite Society. They focused on the African American community in the U.S. since the 1870s.
Right.
Today, over 65% of its mission is served by priests who come directly from Africa. The continent continues to serve the global church.
And you also see the theme of persecution linking the ancient and modern churches.
Coptic Christians in Egypt still face marginalization and persecution today. It's a continuous struggle. And as a permanent symbol of their faith, many tattoo the cross onto their wrist.
A public, enduring commitment.
It echoes the courage of the very martyrs Tertullian was writing about almost 2,000 years ago.
So after all this, what does it all mean for us today? We've looked at the sources and we've seen that African Christians weren't just early adopters, they were the architects.
The actual architects of core Western concepts. From the Trinity to the New Testament canon, to the theological foundation of the Protestant Reformation.
It means we have to engage in historical recovery. Understanding this history is crucial because it completely recenters the narrative.
It demonstrates that Africans were at the table leading the discussion from the very, very beginning.
So here's a final thought we want to leave you with, connecting that ancient world directly to the present, the Coptic language. It's the final linguistic phase of ancient Egyptian.
Right. Hieroglyphics, basically.
And today, Coptic is used almost exclusively for the liturgy of the Coptic Christian Church. Think about that for a second. The oldest indigenous language of Egypt, a civilization that predates Greece and Rome, is preserved today.
Not by secular academia, not by historians in a museum.
But by the very Christian faith that some people claim was imposed on them by outsiders. What unexpected historical truths might still be locked away in those ancient African texts, just waiting to reshape our understanding of the early world?